Welcome back. Oh good, more development. We often talk about how crowded Sarasota is and the lack of affordable middle-class housing. Well, they're building in Lakewood Ranch 5,100 new homes on 30,000 acres. It is still feeling a real need for housing, or is it adding to a problem of too many cars, too much traffic, and too many people on the Suncoast? And joining us now are Dan Lobeck, the president of Control Growth Now and radio host on WSRQ, Kathy Antunes, and welcome to you both. Dan, let me start with you because we do often talk about the unaffordability of the Suncoast for just middle-income folks, and I would imagine that more development in places like Lakewood Ranch, where the housing is just a little bit less expensive, is a good thing.
Well, the affordable housing needs to be near the jobs, and putting it out in urban sprawl isn't the right policy.
You could go on. I mean, I mean, everything is a matter of degree. Lakewood Ranch and Sarasota, downtown Sarasota, is not that far apart.
Well, but the problem is the traffic, and what you need to do is have people near the jobs, near the amenities. That's why urban sprawl is so disastrous. And the Sarasota County Commission, being so pro-developer, has opened up the whole Eastern County all at one time. And the development is coming up, and it's going to be about the size of the city of Sarasota in terms of population.
Kathy, they would not be building it if there were not demand for it.
Sure. I mean, there is demand, but the reality is we have people here now who are not, they don't have a shot at a reasonable place to live. Half of the children in Sarasota County are eligible for a free or reduced lunch. There's just a program that Washington Hill is taking care of babies. Again, half of the kids in Sarasota County are being born into poverty. So where are those families going to live? And I don't see that Lakewood Ranch, I mean, is there real affordable housing? Is accessibility to jobs is an issue?
Right, but as they said in Taylor's story, about 850 people are moving to Florida every day. They have to go somewhere.
Sure.
Be that as it may, where do they go around here?
Well, and I'd like to speak to the building model that we're seeing, which sounds good, but the 2050 plan that they dismantled really insisted on compact walkable development, which does set the table for jobs and not having to drive to do everything. Dan's point is well taken.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the Lakewood Ranch expansion project. Welcome back. We are talking about the expansion of Lakewood Ranch, and joining us for more are Dan Lobeck, the president of Control Growth Now, and radio host Kathy Antunes of WSLR Radio. Kathy, I take it that you are not opposed in theory to the expansion of Lakewood Ranch and room for more homes and more people living here. Is it the question of doing it or how we go about doing it?
Yeah, it's absolutely a question of how we go about doing it. For the reasons Dan talked about, reducing traffic, when you build in a truly mixed-use, walkable fashion, you eliminate the need for car trips to just get a loaf of bread or go to the post office. It's important that we build that way, not just for transportation, but also it generates enough tax revenue to pay for the services that it requires. One of the reasons the county has perpetual financial problems is sprawl doesn't pay for the services it requires. You wind up, well, because it's a very infrastructure hungry method of building. And so a single family home, there's a study, the landmark study done on this was in Sarasota County and found that for a subdivision home in Sarasota County, it takes 80 years to pay off its infrastructure, which is longer than the life of the infrastructure. It's simply not a sustainable way to build.
But Dan, this is not a problem unique to Sarasota County. You see this everywhere, a discussion about sprawl and how much is too much, and I don't know too many places around Florida or the United States in general which is putting mass transit infrastructure in there to handle population growth.
Well, you know, Kathy's a big advocate of mass transit, me less so, but the problem is we're not building the infrastructure needed to accommodate the growth at the same time as the growth. We're going to be gridlocked with this boom that the county has opened up for a massive urban sprawl throughout the Eastern County. What's going on in the city of Sarasota, the West Villages, another 50,000 people down there, you know, all going on at the same time. And Fruitville Road and Lakewood Ranch Boulevard is going to be a nightmare. There's another huge development, the Fruitville Initiative, going on right at that corner. And I could point out other locations that they just are not planning.
Well, you open up a lot of questions here. You can't, starting with the fact that we can't shut the doors around to the sun.
What you do is control it, though. You make growth pay its own way, so you have the money to build the infrastructure. You protect the environment rather than paving it over.
We are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on Lakewood Ranch expansion will continue right after a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. We are talking about Lakewood Ranch expansion, and joining us for more are Dan Loback, the president of Control Growth Now, and radio host Kathy Antunes of WSLR Radio. And Dan, let me pick up with you because I asked you, we can't close down the Suncoast to new residents, but you say control it. What do you mean by control it? Are you talking about limiting the number of people who can move into areas like Lakewood Ranch?
No, that would be illegal. The courts say that. But what you do is, it used to be that Sarasota County opened up just enough land to meet population projections. It was in the comprehensive plan. A year and a half ago, that was repealed. And the doors were taken off the hinges. Whole Eastern County, everywhere else, all at once, whatever they can build, whatever they can sell, that's what we get. We're going to have a population boom because of that. It's a matter of meeting demand, but not getting ahead of demand and getting ahead of the capacity of our roads, our schools. School impact fees are 1/4 of what the consultant recommended. And they're at capacity now, many of them. The roads obviously are getting overcrowded. Our environment's not being protected. Neighborhoods aren't being protected. Growth is not being made to pay its own way as it should.
So when you say, when Kathy, in response to Kathy, that an issue of mass transit in terms of building a system and getting it paid for where we can move people from A to B, you're saying that's not necessarily the answer? Is your answer requiring developers to pay for the roads and the infrastructure?
Well, I believe in multimodal transportation. Kathy's a big advocate of that. But I don't think that buses get caught in traffic too are the solution. And light rail is so tremendously expensive that it's really not at anybody's radar. So yeah, it should be part of the mix for people in need that need to go by bus. But as a replacement, even if you have a lane that's just for buses, that's going to squander so much capacity that it doesn't make sense. Maybe we'll get into debate here on this, but but mass transit is not the golden solution to gridlock on our roads. What the solution is to have measured control of growth, allowing growth. Growth can be good if it's controlled.
Kathy, I saw those renditions of what they have planned for Lakewood Ranch that Mr. Bedford described really well, and it looks like a beautiful town center. Just your casual viewer would be watching and say, it looks gorgeous, and you would be increasing your tax base, and therefore, I'm asking the question.
Right.
If you more people move in, more businesses spring up, aren't you increasing your tax base to do the things that you're talking about in terms of infrastructure and making this all work? Actually,
the data shows over the long term, no. With the sprawl development model, now they're talking a good talk, and if this is truly at a higher density and walkable, and I don't really think I was talking mass transit, but I do think that's a good idea. If it's truly walkable, it's like the way America built before World War II, before the automobile was ubiquitous. We had main streets with residential and offices overhead, more than a couple stories. I only saw a couple stories there. That's good, but it could be higher. And people didn't have to get in a car to do everything. They walked, That is inherently financially solvent. At that point, too, you didn't have this massive financial leveraging. A lot of things have changed that have facilitated this growth model. The other problem is we are not optimizing our existing infrastructure. And I'll give you an example. If you look on Fruitville Road, before you get to I-75, right next to a public shopping center, there's a huge, huge field. And you know what? It's in that field is cows. This is what one national planner called Sarasota's checkerboard look. To Dan's point, we need to be building infill where we already have infrastructure investments before we go out and develop rural land. The problem is people like Pat Neal and Rex Jensen or SMR buy huge swaths of rural land for nothing. Then they donate to the commission and get it all rezoned. And so their investment, they're buying land cheap and making huge money, where people who have land inside the urban service boundary that needs to be developed, they don't have that play. And it's a problem for us.
But that is not a new argument. And
it's a national problem.
It's a national problem. And the fact is, voters have the opportunity to, vote commissioners in and commissioners out. If the same commissioners are voted in time after time, then obviously folks around here think they're doing a pretty good job.
No, they don't. What they don't know is the facts. And it's great you have shows like this to try to bring out the facts. But when a candidate like Alan Mayo, who's running for re-election, can raise $80,000 by a few phone calls to big developers, and his opponent, Lourdes Ramirez, struggles to raise 10, it's not an even playing field. And that's why I'm for single-member districts, to cut the cost of campaigning by 80%.
That's an upcoming show.
Good.
But one may argue, if people feel that strongly about it, then they could contribute to the candidate of their choice,
Can I
Kathy.
jump in?
Yeah.
I give talks on dark money in Sarasota County. That
I've heard.
we have a dark money problem in local elections that most people really aren't aware of. But when I ask people, and these are people who are focused on local politics, to name their 5 county commissioners, very few people. In an audience of 100, sometimes no hands go up, maybe 5. Most people don't know their county commissioners, and yet, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, until there's a fire in your own backyard. And then people realize, wait a minute, like Al Mayo and Siesta Key with height restrictions, or the Stigney Point 41 development that Benderson wants to do, they realize this commissioner doesn't care what I think.
But
Celery Fields.
Celery Fields,
we do have the ability of the public to come out and protest any of these new developments here. And I know, Dan, you are forceful in your opposition of this and other projects in Sarasota. But if people felt so strongly about it, why aren't we seeing the protests en masse to shut it down? Because if there's anything that politicians do listen to sometimes, it is the public pounding on their doors.
When influential, generous developer Jim Gabbard wanted to put a concrete crushing facility next to neighborhoods and a bird sanctuary, nationally renowned, I've never seen the turnout. The place was packed, and it was overflowing into 2 rooms in the hallways. Yet you had 2 of the 3 commissioners vote for it. Because they are heavily financed by that developer and his colleagues.
Mike Moran, that's his district. If we had single-member district, there's no way he would vote for that. So you don't see accountability.
And that's a show that we will be doing there. But as we stand right now, are there predictions that this expansion of Lakewood Ranch is going to go through, and we're going to be getting these new residents who can vote whatever way they choose to?
Well, of course. I mean, it's already going through. I don't think that there's any plan to change it. I don't know that we could change it.
Yeah, it's been approved.
Yeah, it's been approved. But if you go back to what happened with Sarasota 2050, there were private meetings with the developers who fund campaigns, and then it was brought in front of the public, and the whole process. There were processes that were bypassed
Again, I want to
get up public input.
I want to give you one last chance for the last word.
Well, thank you. Growth can be good, but growth needs to be under control. We're the 10th fastest growing community in the United States of America. The secret is out. #1 lists all over the place. So it's a bigger responsibility for the public to identify and elect the candidates that aren't in the back pockets of the developers, that stand for the people, protect neighborhoods, the environment, the taxpayers, and our quality of life.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both.